I'm just going to read something here.
Who else is in there? Anyone?
Oh, wait. Did you see this?
Yeah, he's the most influential.
This is dated. We have a new champion has been crowned.
Oh, really? A new one?
Yes, they had to crouch very low to put the crown on him. Commissioner Harper is now the most influential. But however, Chairman Beach, you are a perennial member of this list.
Influencer list.
When were you first recognized as one of the most influential? Can you speak on the microphone, please?
About 15 years ago.
15 years ago.
And I've been there yearly.
Amazing.
Mr. Chairman, a question?
Yeah.
Have you been so designated?
No, I have not. I am not influential nor most influential.
Absolutely. Nor I.
Maybe one day.
I'm delighted to be in the presence of two distinguished influential.
Now, Chairman Beach, have you ever been on the cover of the magazine?
I've not been on the cover.
That seems
I've
like
been in the magazine several times.
that seems like a missed opportunity for the editorial team.
Yeah, I do think it's.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next. It's always next.
Anybody have a Sharpie? If anybody up in my office is listening to this, if you could bring me a Sharpie, please, that would be fantastic. You think we should start? All right, how about DDS? This says you need to go first. Where do y'all need to be?
Well, I got a tournament I gotta get to.
A tournament?
Yes.
What's happening?
What? Dead people.
Internment.
In tournament. What does that mean? I've never heard that word before.
People have been cremated.
Okay.
and
Oh, an
interned.
internment.
Yeah.
I thought you said an internment. Okay.
No, it's that Chicago accent. I apologize.
What part of Chicago are you from?
Elgin.
I grew up in Plainfield, Illinois.
Okay.
My mom was from Villa Park, which, as you know, is right next door to Elgin.
Yep.
So,
Very cool.
well, welcome. Y'all have the floor. Thanks for being here today.
Good afternoon, Chairman, and thankfully I can now say members of the committee. I was going to change it
Indeed.
to member of the committee.
Indeed.
We're here, we're going to be fairly brief because we don't have that much that we're actually asking for. Just going to speak to the normal yearly, the adjustment to the agency insurance premiums and the adjustment to TeamWorks. Those are the standard year-to-year adjustments that DOS and SAO make. The three items that are non-routine are the address verification ongoing maintenance, which is 126.2, the annual maintenance for the self-service kiosks, which is 126.3, and the SAVE multi-year fee increase, which y'all of course have heard about the last couple of years, at 126.4. The address verification, ongoing maintenance, we're asking for $168,000. Basically, that will maintain the system whereby we do address verifications online. The customer can take a picture of their address proof and submit it, and the system will use OCR, optical character recognition, to read the address to confirm that it is actually accurate. Right now, 37% of all the current address changes requests are done online or with no human interaction, and we're just trying to shore up that so that the
So this says maintenance of the technology. What what does that mean?
it's the software upgrades.
Okay. So it's
The
annual SaaS.
implementation was funded in the AFY 25. This
Okay.
is just the ongoing to maintain.
Okay.
The next one, 126.3, the self-service kiosks. This is the request for $136,110 for the annual maintenance of the 38 kiosks that we have or are implementing, installing. They are currently in use, and we're happy with the progress so far, and we hope that that will continue.
Yeah, give me just a second. Oh, go ahead.
Those in your driver services
They are-
facilities, are they out in grocery stores or somewhere, or where are
Well,
those?
we have two groups. This particular group is the one that's in our centers.
Okay, so instead of talking to a person, they can go do it all on the kiosk and be done?
Yes, sir. It's an effort to stave off the increase in population, and of course, the uptick due to the conversion to the 8-year license back when we had 5.
Mhm.
We're in that upswing, and it should help alleviate the examiners having to deal with the less complex transactions.
Okay.
If you have a copy of the presentation, the actual picture of the kiosk is on page 8.
And then the final item is the 126.4, the SAVE, the systematic alien verification enforcement, for $263,000.79. That's the federal government increasing the rate by 50 cents per year until 2028 for verifying that a person getting their driver's license is actually in the country and that we know about it.
And this number was projected with FY '24 numbers. What do we know now that we have
plus
some?
a slight build for increasing population.
What do we, have you guys ran the projections with data we have on FY '25?
I actually presented them to Emily. We're actually on the high side right now. We're projecting, year before last, we're an 8% growth factor. Last year, there was approximately a 12% growth factor, and it's looking like we're gonna be around 12 again this upcoming year.
Which would do what to this number? That would make this number high or would make this number
It's
accurate?
gonna go higher.
It's going to increase.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
projecting high right now. We'll end up having to make up the shortage for this year.
Okay. So that brings me to a question I'm going to ask every single person that comes today. So y'all know the way this works. The governor has a revenue estimate, and he has a projected budget. He sends that to the House. They take a crack at that. They vote on their budget, send it our way, and then we work off of that document. There's about a 1% hole in the budget. What I mean by hole is the House increased spending such that we're about 1% over the governor's revenue estimate, assuming that we do not want to take on bond debt, which we've been in a posture the last 3 years of paying cash for our capital projects. And one change that was made in the House is they're actually taking on bond debt, moved a bunch of capital projects to that bond debt, and increased capital projects, as well as a number of other increases across the board. So, to put you on the spot as the first ones, and other people will know this is coming, but can you help us with one or two ideas that you would have that would allow us to cover this 1% gap as it relates to your agency? So if we took every agency individually and tried to save 1%, what would be something that we could do in your agency?
I'm afraid that might be something we need to take back to the commissioner. Is that something that we could get back with you?
That's fair. Would you mind getting that to me before Tuesday? Is that
Yes, sir.
reasonable?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And can I say something, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
It's not just cutting. If you have an area where you think you could grow revenue in your department, that would suffice too. I asked this question last time in the amended budget. The facility that I go to is in North Fulton, and y'all do a great job. You're with Fulton County, where the tax commissioner has his facility, and y'all are right next to it, attached to it. One of the calls we get a lot of calls on as senators is they think we're in the U.S. Senate and can help them with a passport. And we can't help them with a passport. And it's a tough issue and they were closed for a long time during the pandemic. I guess they're opening back up, and they opened the Atlanta office back up downtown. Have we ever thought about contacting and renting out space to the U.S. government and letting them have a passport office? You go get your license, you get a passport, you could get your license plate at Fulton County. You could do it all kind of in one fell swoop. And I think you could look at maybe renting some space out and getting some revenue in your office. That's just a thought.
Okay. We'll certainly look into that.
Thank you, Chairman Beach. Any other questions from the committee? Yeah, so come back to us with that, because all three of your items are actually adds from the general fund, which if we have to go find 1% of general fund money, which is essentially the position that we're in right now with the budget that did come out of the House, would like to know what cuts you guys would be able to help us find.
We'll get it to you.
Say it again. So you guys also have some capital project information in front of you, and you guys have a number of items on here. Do you guys have this sheet? So these are all in 380, so it's 380.68 through 380.72. It looks like it's everything from some more kiosks to HVAC and a renovation of a couple places and some vehicle replacements. Do you guys have that?
Yes, sir.
Can you talk to us about that as well, please?
Okay, so our request, when we, this past year, we asked for $10 million to change out all the Talis kiosks, all the workstations you see at all of our 68 centers. The equipment was almost 7 years old, and it was at a time of replacement. And so we did upgrade the central server. You guys gave us money to upgrade the central server and other things there. The one thing that was missed in that particular request were new scanners for the CSCs. The current scanners they're using are at that almost 7-year age as well. And the scanners that they currently have are causing problems when we try to scan passports or anything like that. So we've already identified scanners to replace that needed to be replaced. The quote was provided for those particular items. On the 6 vehicles, we have 39 of our approximately 135 vehicles that are currently on the replacement list for DOAS. Our 3 facilities trucks, which is we have strategically placed facilities people north, central, and south to maintain the 68 centers throughout the statewide. 2 of those trucks are over 200,000. The other one's around 170,000. And we have several of our OIS vehicles that are nearing 200,000. So that was our plan to replace that. There is 1 semi on that particular request. As you know, we do CDL testing at our centers. We use those semis to train and certify our testers in order to go out into the centers to be able to do that. The semis that we do have right now are over 20 years old. They're on the replacement list, and every time we go to make any repairs to them, it's well over the value of the truck. So it's just time we replace that. Rankin is a smaller center. We asked for $100,000 to renovate there. It's over 20 years old. They just have really just old furniture. The counters are starting to kind of peel. Carpet's been there quite some time, paint, that type of stuff. That's what that particular request is just to make it, get it up to date. And then the 10 self-service kiosks, my understanding is we've gotten a lot of positive reactions to those, so we'd like to try to continue that. Based on the statistics that we've seen so far with the kiosks, we're averaging about 10,000 transactions right now per month, so we are seeing some positive movement there.
I was pretty surprised at the cost of those. What all is in those? There's a screen, a computer, and is there a printer? Is that the?
So this, on page 8 of the presentation, is the actual setup.
Okay.
And so what it does is when you go there at the camera, there's a hydraulic that actually has to adjust to your height and everything else. So when you step up in front of this, there's a board that goes in back of you that blanks out the back for the picture, and then the picture scans up and down. And there's also facial recognition, everything else that runs through this so that they can pair you with your actual driver's transaction.
Okay.
And it'll print your temporary tag right there. Basically everything you do at the counter, you can do at this kiosk.
Okay.
And then the last request was for generators and HVAC replacement. I've got a list of approximately 13 generators and ACH units that are over 20 years old. Those are the ones we're looking to replace. They're at a place of either we're constantly having to repair and it's causing us repair budget, or it just is at the place where it needs to be replaced.
Great. And it looks like the governor and the House all agreed on all 5 of these as well. Any questions from the committee? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend. I will look for that email from you,
Yes, sir.
and appreciate you being here. All right. Governor's Office of Highway Safety. Commissioner, how you doing? I'm doing well. Do you want to start with your 1% suggestion or end with it, or are you going to email that to me?
Well, I was sitting back there thinking, good afternoon, committee members. I want to be brief. I know that's the norm of the meeting. I was sitting back there thinking, we've done everything that we can think of, Mr. Chairman. These 3 positions I'd like to bring to your attention on the track sheet, line 279.3. And the justification is the effect because of the 402CP funds, which was the federal funds, went away. So we was proactive trying to find areas of programming that we could reallocate 8 employees, which is long-standing employees. We were able to do that with 5 staff members, but it left a vacancy or need for us to find funding sources for 3 staff members. That equates to the half of what it would actually cost, and you can see it. The half that's the state portion of $323,835, which would be $161,000. So we've done everything creatively enough to try to find position or funding sources for these 3 individuals. And the governor gracefully helped us out in his amended budget. But these 3 people, Mr. Chairman, they are long employees of the state. And if we had to cut, you'd have to get rid of people who's critical to the infrastructure of our agency, which provides a whole lot of funding for state agencies. And we only got a minimum of 25 people,
27.
27 people.
Can you pull your microphone just a little bit closer? They pinged me earlier on the last presentation, so thank you. Just to make sure everybody, I want to make sure the thousands of people watching at home are able to hear you. 'Cause
Okay.
we can, yeah.
So
So you got money in FY25
yes, sir.
for this. The House zeroed you out.
Yes, sir.
What was the conversation around that? Do you have any idea why
They
that decision
told us
was
they
made?
didn't have enough information. And the director and the deputy director met with them and spoke with them, and then 130,000 of it was put back into the amendment.
By the Senate,
Was it by the Senate?
right? Yeah. So how long have these people been employed with the department?
One is working on 9 years and the other 3. And the other 40, she's a returning retiree. She's our part-timer that does our compliance.
And these people typically have been funded with federal funds. That changed. You all now have a choice of either we find a way to fund them, or obviously that federal money's not there.
And the restrictions with the federal money is they have to be working in a program area. And since they touch every area of the agency, being one is IT, one is our business office manager, and the other one is compliance, you can't tag them to just one program area. They're pretty much spread throughout the agency, so that falls into the same category as we are, because we're under planning and administration, which is
And this is the
state
same
fund.
thing you told us
Yeah,
a month and a half ago.
you could go back and look at
Yeah.
that.
I think we were upstairs in a different room, but yes. Okay.
So it's nothing new, Mr. Chairman. It's just maintaining what we've got.
Okay.
And I want to address your 1% because I'm the money person.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've just moved in our new place, which is a lot more than we're used to spending. So in every other area, we are really watching what we spend. And so our phone system, we've got that updated. There should be an a decrease in that. And as well, we were doing our own kind of computer purchasing and licensing, and now we're going soon to turn it over to GTA, which will save us and help in the reduction.
Okay. Will that happen this year?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Will you, before Tuesday, add up those 2 things for me, what you think the savings might be, and email that my way? Because if what do we need to get to for y'all if we're going to find 1%?
About 9,000 if we go with the governors. Wishful thinking.
Okay. If you can send that to me. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
May yield to the floor so that I can bring up my director of driver's ed. Just give him a couple
Sure.
minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. How you doing today?
Well, how are you all doing?
I'm good.
Just wanted to bring your attention to line 280.1 on page 5. This is an increase in the baseline budget of $522,000 for the Georgia Drivers Education Commission. Each year, the Joshua's Law collections are estimated in the original budget, and for the last 7 years or so, that estimate has been at about $2.9 million per year. And recently, with the passage of HB 242 in the 2023 session, the surcharge collection amount on the traffic citations doubled from 1.5% to 3%. And we're beginning to see those funds come in the actual collections. So we worked with OPB to increase the estimate to be more in line with the actual collections each year, which will help us more accurately budget throughout the fiscal year. That's very simply what that additional $522,000 is, and increases from 2.9 to 3.4. These funds, primary function of the Drivers Education Commission is the operation of the Drivers Education Scholarship Program, which awards up to $500 to students who can demonstrate on a financial need that they need assistance to pay for their driver training course, which is 30 hours of classroom training and 6 hours behind the wheel instruction. And we anticipate awarding approximately 6,200 scholarships in fiscal year 26.
So y'all were collecting 2.9 before the increase. You doubled the fee rate, right? The penalty rate?
That's right. The past 4 or 5 years, it did not reach that 2.9. There was actually a deficit, but we're starting to see that this year. Or in the previous fiscal year, it was 3.4 million. So we worked with OPB to make the baseline for this year at 3.4.
What do you think it will actually be that will be collected this year? Do you think it will be north of that 3.4?
It's hard to say because of the way that those cases go through the court system. It's on a delayed basis when we receive the funds, but eventually it will get up to 6 million. It'll just take probably 4 or 5 years to do so.
Gotcha. Okay. Any questions from the committee? Senator again on 8.
Help me out on driver's education. That's one of the things that no parent wants to have their child killed in an automobile accident. And to me, I'm kind of curious, who's eligible to go through driver's ed under this program? And you know, I know some school systems tell me that they don't do driver's ed. Some of them are doing it. What are the
Right. So
situations?
there's 4 basic ways to complete your driver training in the state of Georgia, which is required for all students. There's a various combination of online courses, doing a parent team guide with your parent, and then the combination of online and with an instructor, and then what we fund, which is the 30 hours of classroom and 6 hours behind the wheel. One of those 4 is required for every young Georgian between 15 and 17 to get their license. As far as the qualifications for our program, it's primarily on a financial needs basis of 175% of the free and reduced lunch level for the state of Georgia. And we also give priority to students in foster care of the state of Georgia, and also those whose parent or guardian is public safety who was disabled or killed in the line of duty, and military who were killed in the line of duty.
But percentage-wise, the ones that are going through that more developed program, you know, what do you think you get 5% of the eligible population, or what do you think your percentage of, you know, because I was lucky as a kid. I was a federal experiment. I said as a 16-year-old, we had a thing out there to Dorville plant. Said the driver's ed thing. A couple schools came together. We did everything from we wore the hell out of some Granadas and Datsun B210. Said but they were it was a great class, and you know, helped us. They tell you how old I am, but that was one of the things that really I think we need to put more emphasis on. So percentage-wise, what do you think you're getting out of all the students in that age group?
In this particular program, it's pretty low, to be honest with you. I do know that the 30-hour classroom and 6-hour behind the wheel, which has been proven in studies to be most effective, is the least chosen method in the state of Georgia to get your license. The number one course being the online training, which is the most cost efficient or the cheapest version for parents to pay for.
What's the cost for that more in-depth program?
They range from anywhere from $45 to a couple $100. And Mr. Chairman, I can provide you with more specific data that was in our annual report, and we have the exact data and percentages on each of those methods that was completed within the state this past year.
Great.
Love to see us do more funding in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you. Senator Anderson, have you seen this yet? Let's take a look at that cover. Let me turn your mic on, real.
He'll be more famous and appreciated once I see the budget.
You want to see that program, that project list, don't you?
Project list.
All right, next up. Let me check my notes here. There he is. There he is. Has he aged at all in the last year? Senator,
Yes,
doesn't look
he
like
did.
it. No, I don't know. I don't know.
He'll be more handsome. The more I hear this report, more and more handsome.
He got extra money last year. He got extra money this year.
Yeah.
He is not aging at all.
Let's see.
We come with a lot of appreciation for this fine committee. Thank you.
I hope you also come with some ideas on 1%.
We do, and I will certainly, Mr. Chairman, address that in the presentation. You have a handout on the table there that I would refer you to, and then I certainly can follow on the track sheet as well. Before I jump into the presentation, I just want to let you know that on the federal level, of which I wish this subcommittee could take a hold of at the federal level and manage it like you do here in the state, but with this continuing resolution and the debate that's going on in Washington will have a real impact on Georgia and all the other states. The current continuing resolution only gives us a daily pro rata share, 1/365th of federal funds, which means we don't have the federal funding in hand to do the things that we need to do, the important projects. The federal government is gracious and allows us to pay it forward with Georgia dollars, and they will reimburse us when there's full federal appropriations. With that being said, we've advanced just south of $700 million of federal projects using state funds. So again, thank you for the robust budget in the amended year and in the past years, which allows us to keep our projects moving forward while we wait on the federal.
So over what period of time is that $700 million that
that's this state fiscal year.
Okay. So typically, under a call it properly functioning federal government, how would you receive your funds?
We would have full access to them when we were ready to advance projects, which total around $1.5 to $1.6 billion among all the federal programs. So as you can see, we're almost, not quite half of the federal year we've advanced ourselves. So if this continuing resolution is for a month of what's being discussed in the media today, that would have an impact on our ability to bid projects in the May letting. If it's the rest of the fiscal year as the House has presented, then the only difference is that instead of the full federal appropriations for FY25 levels, they're at the 24 level, which is about 2, maybe 3% less.
Is this the first time in your life that you've ever preferred a House position to a Senate position?
I would reserve my answer to see how this plays out.
Fair enough.
But I think the wisdom of this subcommittee would, again, if you can impart that to Congress, it would be fantastic. But just wanted to give you an update on that, and let me get into the 25 budget. And if you flip to your handout over on page 2, I think this is important to answer your question, Mr. Chair.
Can I actually ask you a quick question on that?
Yes.
Where's the $700 million coming from? And I know that I learned the other day that you were on the Treasury Board for the state. You're a member of the State Treasury Board. And you guys have a number of facilities that you use to generate interest on I think it's like $60 billion that the state has across various avenues. Does the fact that we're loaning that money to the federal government essentially but being paid back, is there an interest yield on that at all?
Unfortunately, no, because we're using our state budgets, just like the budget presentation we're going through today. We're using our capital programs to advance those programs. We get a IOU, it's called advanced construction, and then when the federal dollars become available, we just repay ourselves. Unfortunately, I don't get to charge the federal government interest on.
So it's
us
actually not
advancing.
even money though for us, because if you were able, we wouldn't just have that 700 million sitting in a bank. It would be taking part in some of the treasury activities that you would know more about than me.
It would have to be that way, and that would be subject to appropriations for us to be able to
Sure.
pull on those.
Okay,
So
that's interesting.
we're in a decent place, but it is a concern. Over on the second slide, I want to go into this because it gets at answering your question. I'll remind you that the money in GDOT's budget is predominantly from dedicated sources. Of course, the biggest source is motor fuel, and I'll talk about what those numbers are, but I'll call your attention to those middle icons there, which is the Transportation Trust Fund, consisting of the EV fee, the heavy vehicle fee, and the hotel fees. And those are, again, by statute, to be dedicated for transportation purposes, and up to 10% of those dollars can be used for transit purposes. And the last one is the rideshare, the Transit Trust Fund, which is the rideshare fee, which those dollars have to be used for transit purposes around the state, and I will speak a little bit about what those do in a minute. What's not shown on this list are the funds that are not dedicated, which get to your 1% question, which are state general funds. And so if you flip to the next slide, you'll see a breakdown for FY26 of what the changes are in each of the categories. And I remind you that the excise collections, the budget for FY26 will be based on the actual collections from FY25, the current year we're in. That's why in the amended budget year, it gets adjusted because it's based on the actual collections. The Transportation Trust Fund and the Transit Trust Fund fees are appropriated on a 2-year lag. So these FY26 numbers are based on actual collections out of FY24, and they're being recognized as the changes to the base. And the last one is state general funds. So as I did the math very quick, the $3.1 million add to state general funds represents about a little over 7.5% increase in state general funds to our budget. General funds are in two places in our budget, in aviation and the rail program, and I'll talk through those when I get there, and I'll maybe shed some light on some of the changes the House made that would be informative. So next slide.
So can I ask you a quick question on that
Yes, sir.
slide? So for all of our constituents back home, they pay income tax, they pay state sales tax. How much of their income tax dollars and their state sales tax dollars go towards building new roads and bridges from a GDOT perspective anywhere in the state?
Based on this, it would be the state general funds with $41.3 million in the base, and
But that's going towards rail and air.
that's for
correct.
rail and air,
So-
not to surface transportation.
So
of
to
roads.
actually build a road or a bridge,
None.
$0
That's correct.
of all of our income tax money and all of our other sources of revenue, we currently allocate $0 of what I'm going to say people think of as traditional taxation in the state towards the program. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I've been asked that. Well, I've been told many times that you're using my tax money to improve this road, and I said,
Now,
well,
it
I'm
is-
using your motor fuel money.
Correct.
So,
Yep. When I ask people that back home, they are usually shocked because they think of building roads and bridges as a core competency of government, a core function of government, and they are surprised to hear that the money that comes out of their paycheck every 2 weeks, that not a dime of that is going towards building a road or a bridge. And I think that's something that we need to have a conversation about in the state.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that is very wise. Okay, the next chart is just a summary. I always like to sort of show where the money's going. And so this is a summary of the budget programs from highest to lowest. And obviously you can see $1.4 billion in state funding to the capital projects, which is capital maintenance and capital construction, exactly what they are. The next biggest bucket is the routine maintenance category of taking care of our roadways, road sizes, bridges, and keeping the house, as I like to say. And of course, the biggest part of that is actually we outsource the biggest part of that work. General operations actually are 5 budget programs combined, just for convenience to show, but those 5 budget programs are just admin, data collections, planning division, program delivery, so the people that do get the projects ready to go is program delivery, and then traffic management. When you think about heroes, you think about cameras, signs, technology, things like that. And so that represents about 11% of our budget. The LMIG represents 10% of the excise collections. And then down the line, you can see Geo Bond Debt, Intermodal, Payments to CERT, ATL, which will be spoken of next. On the next page, what we've done is tableize the budget out of the track sheet. So if you have your track sheet, it'd be section 47, and is where we'll begin. What you can see is the budget program down the left column, those various fund sources that I talked about down the second column, and then, of course, the changes to the base. And so the first one I'll show you is Geo Bond Debt, which is declining to a small degree. So Geo Bond Debt was a $13.3 million reduction. We still carry slightly over $1 billion of Geo Bond Debt. So that's to give you our debt profile. But starting on section 47, page 5, we'll jump into airport aid. And so as you can see, the House added, and what I'm showing you today in changes are what the House changes are, okay? So there was a $3.6 million add from the House to aviation program, to airport aid, bringing it to $30 million. In the amended 25, the airport aid was at $34.1 million. So that was a change to airport aid.
Commissioner, of the surrounding states in the southeast, what's their base budget number in terms of airport aid? Can you give us a range or maybe some examples of what?
I'll better get you the data. I know they vary. Florida is much greater. North Carolina is much greater. Alabama, South Carolina, somewhat similar. And airport numbers vary pretty wildly as well.
Okay, thank you.
We can pull that. The next big item I'll highlight is the capital construction number there, which consists of motor fuel and transportation trust fund fees, adding $107 million. That represents about a 10.5% increase over what we had in the amended 25. As I presented to the Senate Transportation Committee, obviously cost increases are real and they've continued, but this will help us to address cost increases and potentially maybe a project or two more. The next major add on this page is capital maintenance, $110 million add there. Very important again, as we're resurfacing about less than half of the miles of roads that we were able to before the high prices over the last 4 years. So this helps us again to pave more roads and do capital preservation and maintenance on bridges and roadways. On the next slide, or next page, over on 6, just highlight a few things here. LMIG, which is on page 9 of your track sheet. Again, that's an adjustment based on the actual excise that was collected, or estimate on what will be collected in FY25. So that brings it to $247 million. That's a 12.5% increase to LMIG. Local roads, right below that, again, just to thank you to the amended 25 budget for the $265 million that goes out to cities and counties on the LMIG formula, but with no match. Obviously, that's been addressed in the amended budget for the last 2 years, but I'll just highlight that for your information. The rest of the changes on this slide are the DOAS state changes, so not much to highlight there. And then on the next slide is rail. And so let me highlight this. This gets to your 1% question as well. In the rail program, there are two adjustments, state general funds and locomotive diesel. In the base budget, or in the governor's rec, there was a reduction in locomotive fees, which are the sales tax on diesel fuel for locomotives.
And that's 368.3.
Yes, sir.
Committee wants to see it in there.
Thank you. 368.3. So the House restored that reduction. The reduction was for when there was the exemption of the sales tax during the governor's state of emergency, declared state of emergencies. And so the House restored that at 4.8 to bring the rail total to a little over $13 million.
Can you walk us through that? Because we had the gas tax reduction, that was made whole by the governor.
in the amended.
in the amended.
Yes, sir.
Would it, do you know what the plan would the plan be to make rail whole in the amended, and the House is doing it early, or would the plan have been to not make rail whole? Have you been part of conversations, or?
Well, I haven't had those direct conversations,
Okay.
so, again, I just remind you that the rail program does a couple of things. The state general funds are just to pay our staff to run the program and to do some very minor work. The locomotive diesel program does three things. We actually have a program for rail preservation, rail enhancement, and rail access. And so that's a competitive program. We've got 28 freight operators operating on Georgia's railroads around the state. So those to do, either capital preservation, enhancement, including like adding sidetracks or adding spurs or industrial access sites. So that's a competitive program. So
You
that's
tied
what
this to the
dollars.
1% question. How is this connected to the 1% in your mind? Are you suggesting this is an area that? we
I
may
would
wanna-
never negotiate against myself, but
Okay.
this is a state general fund, which is the non-dedicated.
You're highlighting basically the only areas of your budget that you have that are not the motor fuel
Dedicated,
tax.
correct.
Okay.
Okay. Next is just routine maintenance. Again, the add there is to deal with the increased cost and taking care of the roadways and roadsides. And then down at the bottom, I'll highlight transit. Again, that was a pretty big increase out of to the transit trust fund that comes from the rideshare. Again, dedicated fees. Highlight that most of these dollars are transferred to the ATL from Director Miller and the ATL board. We retain about $11 to $12 million a year that are distributed to all the rural and small urban transit providers around the state based on a formula, based on the population they serve, if they're in a poverty level, and if they get a little bit of bonus points if they provide service to multi-jurisdictions instead of one county, one transit provider. Some do regional. So, but that's where those dollars go. Also in the budget on 371.3, there was $500,000 removed. That was a one-time fund for a Chatham County project back in FY25. But that's the transit trust fund.
I've got a question from Senator Ginn.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, when we start talking about transit and transit funding, talk to me about percentages of transit money that is spent in whether it be the ATL, CERTA, whatever, that's coming from the state versus the federal government. How much federal money goes into these programs like that compared to state funds?
Sure. So the majority of transit outside the ATL, and Ms. Miller can probably speak better to the ATL area region, but the majority of the funding is federal through FTA. FTA does annual grants for different classifications, whether it's rural, small, urban, and so that's formula distribution. So we have staff that administer those grants, and those grants are matched by locals. So we don't, as the state, don't match their operational grants. So it's local and federal, predominantly around the state. The Transit Trust Fund that we administer, that GDOT administers, again is to do additional transit service or enhancement above their base budget. We wanted to make sure that these Transit Trust Fund dollars did additional things and not supplant existing local transit funding. So percentage-wise, I don't know if you look back in the
in the
base
hinterlands, you're
budget,
saying
it'll show you.
100%. Said the whatever the locals don't cover, and in the ATL.
So
percent.
we're showing for transit for GDOT is there's about 65 million. It's about 60. I can't total it up, but if you look on page 16, you can see the total of state and federal funds for what goes into transit. So the line share, page 18 or 16 on the budget document, sorry, which shows total federal funds of about 65 million and total state funds of about 42 million.
So two-thirds of it basically is coming from feds.
Correct. And you can see that the Transportation Trust Fund is the largest share of the state funds, that Uber Lyft fee, which again, outside the ATL does additional transit enhancements, not supplanting existing operations.
One of the things, Mr. Chairman, if I might, there's a bill out there on BRT lanes. They want to run BRT lanes here, and I'm kind of curious. Okay, they have to have our approval to do that on state routes and so forth. They can do whatever they want to on city streets. My question is if you take a lane that was built with state funds and the things there, and you turn it over and you make a transit lane out of it, where's the cost accounting in a situation like that? What happens for cost accounting on that? Not to mention the inconvenience to the motorists out there that are in a car. But where would that be?
Well, I'd answer that in the fact that, believe it or not, federal highway dollars are allowed to be transferred to transit purposes if a local municipality asks to do so, or a transit operator has an agreement, so that can be done. Again, from a lane utilization point of view, I think we certainly will look at that very closely to understand what the benefit or what the detriment would be to have what's called a dedicated lane for that purpose. So that would be a decision, again, I believe as the legislation is crafted, that would be our decision on a state highway. Again, local governments could make their own decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator.
And Mr. Chairman, with that, the last two things are payments to AT on SERTA, which you'll hear about next.
Great.
So I'd be glad to entertain any questions or comments.
I got a question from Sharon Beach. Comment.
Commissioner, great job. Thank you for all you do. I'm going to be flying up to D.C. with my Chamber of Commerce and CID on a fly-in. Is there anything we could do? As you know, we got a new sheriff in town, President Trump, and a new Secretary of Transportation. Is there anything we could go up there and advocate for you that would help you from the federal standpoint? Would it be block granting money back to you with no federal strings attached? Would it be able to maybe use the rest areas to create revenue? I know there's a lot of strings attached to. I've been advocating for us to use our rest areas as a revenue source to be able to do things with that. Is there a list of things you could put together in the next 30 days that you could get to Chairman Dolezal and myself? And I've advocated that he take a trip up there and meet with the Secretary of Transportation too, and see if there's anything we can do to cut red tape and streamline things and help you get money and get shovels in the ground faster. So if you could do that, I would appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
It's more of a comment
yeah.
than.
Well, glad to, and thank you for that. The timing of that is important. The federal transportation bill expires September 2026. So Congress is actively looking at the next 5 years of transportation funding. They're actively starting on that now, and I understand the House wishes to have a bill out by the fall of this year, and I know the Senate is well underway as well. So that'd be good timing, and appreciate that support.
Any other questions from the committee? Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, before you leave, I did get a Sharpie.
Yes, sir.
And I actually commandeered this copy from the Rules Chairman's office.
Uh-oh.
So if you don't mind signing
You
this for the
wanna-
Rules
you
Chairman for when I
want,
return it.
All right.
I like to return things in a better condition when I borrow them than when I took them. And I could think of no greater gift for our Rules Chairman than to have an autographed copy of
So,
James Magazine.
So no mustache and devil horns. is what
You
you're
do what you want to do. But
We'll do that later.
yeah.
Yeah, right. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right. Next up, I have the ATL with the JM. From the JM, I guess we should say.
And all the other initials and acronyms, right?
You got any initial ideas on 1%?
For my agencies, 1% of zero is zero.
Okay.
We don't have any state general funds.
So you're even easier. It's even easier to find yours than GDOT's
Yeah,
because they only had 4 million and you've got 0.
correct.
All right. Do you have any money you want to donate?
if you wanted to change the law so that we could use it for non-transportation purposes.
That's what we do around here. We change laws all the time, for better or worse.
We are putting it to good use, Chairman, I assure you, for our growing state and the travel demand that we have border to border. Commissioner mentioned payments to CERTA. I had not planned to speak to that today since there are no changes, and those are for the purpose of predominantly bond repayment for GDOT projects. It's, in case you wanted to see, it's on line 373.100, about 76 million there. But today I was asked to speak about ATL, which I wasn't able to present on at our amended 25 budget presentation. But speaking of acronyms, wanted to share with you a diagram for how it all works, or how it works together, I should say. Of course, the Georgia Constitution is what guides our agencies, and the Governor and General Assembly's role in transportation is here, Governor in blue, General Assembly in green. So the Georgia Department of Transportation Commissioner is appointed by the board members of the State Transportation Board, who is approved, who are appointed by you all. And then the General Assembly also appoints most of the board members to the ATL. The governor does have roles in all of these agencies, though, and I'm the appointee for that as the director of planning at GDOT. The governor also appoints the chair of the ATL board, but the balance of the members are General Assembly. The governor chairs the board of the State Road and Tollway Authority, which also has the OPB director and the Commissioner of Transportation. And Greta is Georgia Regional Transportation Authority is a 13-county Metro Atlanta only that has a very confined responsibility set in approving short-range plans in Metro Atlanta and reviewing and approving developments of regional impact, again, in that 13-county footprint.
Chairman Hawkins, do you need something from us in this committee, or are you here for a different?
I'm looking for insurance at 4. I still in here today?
4 o'clock? Maybe, but you're early. Did you set your clock back 2 hours last week? 4 or 2 hours last week?
I got nowhere else to be, so I thought I'd be enlightened.
You're more than welcome to stay. I just want to make sure you didn't need anything from us and that you weren't in the wrong room.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Do you have any ideas on how to cut these budgets 1%?
I'm sorry.
We're trying to cut these budgets by 1%. So if you get any ideas, let us know. And also, I don't know if you saw this, but last year, Russell McMurray was on the cover of James Magazine as the most influential. So,
All county?
yeah. So if you want a copy of this, just let us know. We'll get you a copy of that as well.
I think I may leave for a while.
Yeah.
Never mind. I'll let you go through this. I'll be back.
Good to see you, Chairman.
So I won't take it personally that Hill left. I'll just blame the commissioner for his departure. Carrying on a little bit more about the ATL. By statute, it is divided. There are 15 total board members. Again, the governor appoints the chair. There are 2 appointees from Lieutenant Governor's office, 2 appointees from the Speaker's office. Both of those currently are vacant because of recent resignations. And then the 10 that are elected by General Assembly members by district map, as you see on the left here, those are hard-coded in law and do not change. This session, in fact, next week, we will have elections for districts, the odd-numbered districts, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, and hoping for your participation in those elections so that we can get to a caucus and secure the next terms of the board members. Overview of the ATL. Express operations is the most tangible thing that we do on the day-to-day basis. I'm going to talk a lot more about that here shortly. Regional transit planning, we'll also speak about that. Oversight is a kind of a strong word. We're the disseminator of federal funds, and we do make decisions on transit trust fund dollars that the trustee allocates to the Atlanta region. And then there is, of course, a county transit T-SPLOST option
that the ATL statutorily has a role in approving those local initiatives at 2 different stage gates in the process, and we provide a good deal of technical assistance and coordination amongst local transit operators. There is a QR code there for Express's website, and also I can call your attention to the handout that we have that explains what we have done, what we are doing, and what our go forward looks like at the ATL. Happy to answer any questions on that. Budgetarily speaking, the governor did not make any recommended changes to the base budget of $9.2 million, again of transportation trust fund dollars entirely. The House did add language, as you can see there on the slide in section 47 of their bill, to evaluate the function of planning as transit ridership remains below pre-pandemic levels and transit SPLOST adoption in the region is minimal. Report findings to OPB, Senate budget, House budget later this year. Thankfully, we have a head start on all of that because we are very deliberative in the work that we do at ATL and going forward with we call it a transit plan, but it's really how we're going to invest the dollars that we have in ways that have the most impact for taxpayers.
I had a conversation the other night with MARTA at the Transportation Committee dinner, and their ridership is right at, I think, about half of pre-pandemic levels. How does your ridership compare across the...
Good question. So our ridership is for the express commuter service is only for commuter service. It's inbound from the suburbs in the morning, outbound from the downtown area and perimeter out to the suburbs in the afternoon, not an all-day service. And that is really was designed for pre-COVID commute patterns. So our ridership is like other commuter services around the country. We're at 30% of our ridership pre-pandemic.
Did any of that change? Have you seen any change in that with federal workers coming back to work in the city?
We haven't seen that yet, but it will start to happen. The federal government does, I think, almost entirely subsidize federal workers' commute options other than automobile. So we think we'll see more riders, which is great. We need to fill up our seats. Even with the reductions that you'll see, we have more empty seats. Would love to have federal workers in there rather than on our roadways. Here is the ridership statistics over time on the on the left side. Fiscal 19, about 7,700 average daily boardings. That's basically kind of divide that by 2 to get the total number of riders. Generally speaking, it varies on a Monday through Friday basis, but it was more consistent Monday through Friday in 2019 than it is now, where our average daily boardings is 2,300. We took a 90% hit, as you can see, year after COVID. It has since, though, climbed back threefold since the depths of the pandemic effects. And we are seeing higher ridership versus last year, month over month, but we still don't have an acceptable seat utilization, which is why we embarked upon this, and then Governor and you all reduced the ATL budget to make sure our services were commensurate with travel demand. So the route's running out there today, and I say today because literally we have not made the reductions yet. There's a very elongated process the federal government requires us to go through, and I'll talk a little bit about that. 197 total commuter bus trips a day, down to 110. A dozen of those 110 we're going to drop off at MARTA stations to make better use of the infrastructure we already have. We're reducing the number of park and ride lots, both the ones that we own and the ones that we lease, and reducing our number of stops from 45 to 41. Here's what
I'm going to ask one question really quickly, and I'll get to Chairman Beach. Walk me through, Brandon, give me just a second.
Okay.
Walk me through the economics of this. So what did the bottom line of how much a rider was paying, how much of that did that cover pre-pandemic in terms of your overall operating budget? How much is it covering now? And have you guys done the math to figure out kind of what we're subsidizing per rider currently?
Pre-pandemic, we were about 30 to 33% covered by fare revenues. It's down to about 7 or 8% now. And that's simply because we don't have as many riders sharing the load.
Sure.
Not as many riders paying to get on the buses. So our utilization rate, our standards are for every bus to have at least 30% of the seats filled. We have been at 17% of the seats filled.
And these numbers are raw numbers, and you said divide it in half to get the number of people, correct? Roughly.
Yes,
So
roughly.
2,300 riders a day, right? On the purple? Sorry. You talk quiet and I talk loud, so it's hard to regulate. 2,300, so call it,
We have, it on a day-to-day basis, it varies, right?
Okay,
So you
sure.
don't want it to be, not everybody gets on the bus every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. In fact, we've seen a lot of Monday drop-offs in terms of ridership. And Friday, really, about half of the people ride. So on an average, you could split this in
Sure.
half. But of the total number of unique riders that we have, we're anywhere from 1,600 to 1,800 unique people who will get on the bus on at least one day a week, usually 2 or
Okay.
3.
about how much money across federal tax money and any state tax money that you have, what's the subsidy that we're paying a day per rider? Do we have that number?
To the point of the collective we paying
Yes.
taxes, because there's federal and there's
Correct.
state, right? So what, let me take a look at my notes, make sure I get my number right. Of the total budget, 31% of it is state funded,
Okay.
and 50, one more, make sure I've got it right. Yes, 56% is federal funded. So the 9.2 is 31% of our total budget of nearly 30 million, and then federal funds 16.5 million.
So they're, how much are they paying per day, the riders?
It depends on their which fare product
Give me an
they
average number.
choose. Average is $3.50.
Okay, and that's covering 7%.
Correct.
So if I multiply that times $3, we're subsidizing $42 roughly per route, per trip per rider.
Per trip.
So if they ride round trip, we're paying the collective over $80 per rider to be on a bus.
It's around $80 today, and that will
Yep.
change with the reduction.
But even back in the day, that was still it was a significant number, just not as.
Correct. I believe it was somewhere between $27 and $30 per person per day.
Chairman Beach, sorry to delay on that. I just wanted to go down that path with her to get to that. So I recognize you for a
All right.
question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Park and ride lots.
Yes, sir.
How many do we have? How many do we own? And how many do we lease? And if you're going to close them down, what is your game plan to create revenue or do something with them?
Great
And
question.
not let them sit empty?
Yes, great question. And we were very careful about which park and ride lots, as we were doing this analysis, to keep open versus close. If we own the asset, we want to keep it unless there's a real reason not to. So as you can see in the slide here, today we have 27 total park and ride lots. 12 of them we own, 6 are owned by other governments, including GDOT. 9 are leased. We will be divesting of 1 park and ride lot, that's in Riverdale, and we believe that the county may be interested in purchasing that land. The 7 leased park and ride lots that we will be closing down, we are going to turn those, curtailing leases early, so it's an operational expense saved. As we turn it back to those private property owners, we have to make sure that we're handing it back in the same condition we got it, so we're making some repairs in that process. This is the most economical way to do it, and not to leave stranded assets.
Could we help those 7 folks that are leasing? Could we help them turn that into truck parking? I mean, we have a real truck parking problem. And if these lots are on major thoroughfares, we should look at every opportunity to encourage truck parking.
In terms of the leased park and ride lots, many of them are churches. So that wouldn't work. Again, these are private property owners. Then there's places like Mall of Georgia and BrandSmart. There are complications there.
Senator again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know, Ms. Miller, you've probably ridden one of these ride share programs like Uber or Lyft or whatever. Got any idea what you paid for last Uber or Lyft ride?
let's see, was it during a surge event or just a regular, probably $12, $15, yeah.
And they picked you up pretty much where you were, and they took you where you wanted to be.
Yes, sir.
When do we get to the realization that at $80 a ride, we'd be a hell of a lot better off just to say, hey, we're ceasing operations and we're going to take people from where they are to where they want to be?
Is not sustainable, right? So I'm going to share with you what we're doing to reduce the service that we have here. It is very interesting. There are trends for people to commute to work using Uber and Lyft. That is actually going up. What we also are doing is funding what are called micro-transit pilots. Cobb County is one of them. It opened in the end of September last year, so we've got about 6 months under the belt. Microtransit is kind of like a hybrid between a local bus and an Uber route. Pay $2.50 per ride. I can show you the Cobb Link website. Type in a QR code, say, come pick me up here. Our early metrics is that the average wait time is 14 minutes, so just a little bit longer than maybe an Uber or Lyft. And the trip distances are about the same. And we are, again, just started that, but part of the work we're going to do is to analyze the cost of that versus the trips that were supported and handled, people going from their neighborhoods to shopping centers, to healthcare centers, you name it, for those destinations. They picked up the microtransit at Cobb Link. They paid $2.50. How much did that cost? Versus if Cobb County had to pay for the fixed route bus running constantly with probably a lot of empty seats. So we're going to do that cost comparison because that hybrid between an Uber and a local bus has a lot of promise, a lot of interest. MARTA did a pilot study on that too, pilot program. It was called MARTA Reach, very popular. So we have proof of concept and we're testing it out in other parts of the region.
Thank you.
Chair Burns, your light was on, then it went off. Do you have a question?
Just to follow up, and I appreciate you looking at alternatives because at the end of the day, continuing the current path may not be sustainable.
Right.
Are these single ride options, or are they multi-rider options? In other words, in this Uber, I can pair up, and I'm concerned about providing basically single rider options when there may be multi-rider potential, and I'm also concerned about the amount of traffic increase and the amount of emission increase associated with that.
Good questions. Let me see if I interpret it correctly, if this answers. The Cobb Link are van-like vehicles, so it is a shared ride.
So it's shared ride, but it could be single, but it is designed for multi-rider.
Correct.
Shared.
And that's part of the lead time it takes from when you call the ride to it arrives. They want to see if they can pair up other riders to it. It's kind of like the Uber share.
The Uber share, which is available.
Yes.
If you choose it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is provide a service, but hopefully not have to deal with as high a cost on a typical sustainable bus route. Is that not
Correct.
true?
That's correct.
Well, and like I say, we've got to look for options, look for alternatives. I appreciate your investigating those. Thank
That's
you.
right. Thank you. We're also beginning to explore how autonomous vehicles might be able to assist in that. Not the Waymo type, not subsidizing Waymo type, but the same sorts of proven to be very safe and cost-effective autonomous technologies on a car can be applied to small vehicles, small bus vehicles, which would also save on driver costs.
Can I ask you a question? Looking at the graphic up there, and where you're serving with that 4 to 5 million person service area, right? Roughly.
Maybe a little smaller, yeah.
3?
Yeah.
Let's call it 3.
Yeah.
And 1,600 people a day are using it, right?
Right.
So I want to go back to what you said at the beginning, that there's some federal rules around shutting it down or reducing routes. If you were to take this to the extreme, and you were to say, we're just going to stop this, how long would it take to do that, and how much state money would be saved when we did get to the point of not providing this as a service at all?
We have not done that analysis yet. We can certainly do that. I think I've got a timeline in here. Yeah, let me click to this real quick. So this is the timeline to simply reduce the service. where we started with public meetings last January, and because there are requirements of the federal government to do public outreach, to design the system in a way that doesn't have disadvantaged impacts to certain communities, there's a lot of effort that goes in communicating to the public, getting their feedback, telling the riders this is what's going to change, and having board approvals along the way. Roughly, you can see here a 14 to 16-month process. So
And this
that
is for you
just
to streamline your routes and basically get to an optimized schedule.
Yes. And that is, again, because the federal government funds 56% of the service, so we have to comply. What the state obligations would be in a full bringing down of the service, don't know yet, but the obligations would likely be the contractual agreements with the funding that supports the park and ride lots and that support the buses. It would be for any liquidation. So we're about to offload some buses, dozens of buses, because they're not being used, and they won't be used in the new service profile. There are certain rules that we have to follow. Some of the dollars have to be paid back to the federal government. We get to keep very little of it because the feds paid for most of it. Department of Administrative Services keeps some of the expenses as well, so there's multiple layers to it that we would need to calculate. We can do that.
Has any municipality, any state ever done this and pushed this to the locals and allowed local municipalities to offer that service if they find a value in it?
I'm not aware of that, but let me share something with you that's actually kind of going in the opposite direction. It could be telling in other ways as well. One of the directives that you all gave us is to look to partner with and consolidate with local providers. So in the I-75 North corridors, Cobb County, Cobb Link, today they run 49 commuter trips into the city. And and it says proposed because the ATL board has not yet approved this, but once it is approved, it will go from 49 to 12. That's a 76% decrease in the number of trips. Cobb is going to fund half of those, but ATL will operate them. So in the I-85 corridor,
Is Cobb funding any of them right now?
They are. They're funding most of them.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So they are interested in continuing to fund it and have that service option, but I think one of the roles of ATL is to help with coordination and streamlining, so we don't economies of scale, so to speak. And so the Cobb and Gwinnett transit operators are seeing that, which will begin to happen once we get approval from the board and sign intergovernmental agreements.
Okay. So you're basically looking at a 75% reduction, and the goal would be to optimize, find the routes people are actually using,
Yes.
provide that as an option for them, and then I assume you'll continuously evaluate that. Chairman Burns.
Just a question on your partnerships. In the Cobb Link and the Gwinnett corridors, do we have ridership numbers for those trips? Are they substantially different? Is that? My question really is, are those corridors sustainable?
I think they are amongst the most sustainable. The ones that are the least sustainable, for instance, is Georgia 400 corridor and I-85 South. Ridership is very low, and we think even as we reduce service, the ridership might go down even further. These are the two most viable corridors.
Yeah, I'd like to see some ridership on those two primary corridors.
We will certainly get that to you.
Thank you.
Another dimension that's happening here is the return to office policies, not just of federal workers. We're going to be doing an analysis to look at how the congestion has grown on our roadways during peak commute hours over the course of the past year to 3 years, how things have changed. And one of the value propositions initially of Express was not for folks who had no other option, but for folks who did not want the stress of sitting in traffic. So we think that impetus for riding Express is likely to come back over time, but we're going to be monitoring ridership month by month, as we always do. Once the service implements in June, we need at least 3 months of understanding of how things are going to shift and people understanding it. We get into the fall, and that's when our ridership always goes up, as you can see here. So once we get into the end of October and November, we'll have a better sense of what is going on with return to office, these new service offerings. I also, though, want to call your attention to another service that we have that's called Vanpool. And I'm not sure if to the degree to which you're aware of this. You might see them around. It's actually operated. This is a great public-private partnership. There are no state funds in this. This is all federal dollars. This is the ridership is year to date is back as at 39% of COVID versus Express is 30%. So people picked these options up pretty well. Our highest trip origin, that is pickup destination, pickup places, neighborhoods in the mornings is McDonough, Noonan, and Stockbridge. And the top destinations are Decatur, both around the VA hospital, Emory University, and CDC, and Marietta to Dobbins Air Force. So this is a very nimble service, kind of similar to microtransit, but on a regional scale. And it's about the same cost to the rider as Express is, but again, there's no state subsidy. Vanpools are not that easy to form. It is a bit of a challenge because the federal subsidy that pays for these require there to not be a driver. Like one of the Vanpool riders has to be the driver, so they're kind of hard to form in that way. So it's not a one-for-one replacement, but the cost to the rider is about the same. And they are Enterprise is soon going to, instead of requiring a monthly pass to be purchased, for riders to be able to purchase a day-by-day pass. So it can be more nimble with commute patterns than we can even be on Express.
I want to go back to what you said about the 400 being the lowest ridership or one of. How does that interplay with the plans for the BRT stations in the express lanes?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're not exactly sure what the low current and projected lower ridership is on that corridor. It may have something to do with the level of congestion. It may have something to do with the socioeconomics of that corridor. I think
it's that.
Yeah.
So given that it's that,
mm-hmm.
how flexible are we on building these stations that may never be used, or would I don't know if there's 1,600 people a day.
Mm-hmm.
What are there right now from the 400 corridor? 100?
I don't
200?
know. I don't know. In terms of the ridership on Express, it's probably about that.
Yeah.
What will be different with the Express lanes? Number one, when MARTA is running transit on those stations, and they're really just going to construct, as far as I know, 2 new ones. They're going to be running service all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So and then there will be the potential for circulators to come on and off, which we don't have today for Express.
Mm-hmm.
You basically have to drive there. So those circulators up and down and the regular all-day service that MARTA has today is going to support a much different set of economic activity. We might see more destinations in that 400 corridor than we do the origins today coming into the city. So it's just going to be different travel profiles. Additionally, it is free to travel on the 400 corridor. It will continue to be a free option, but the transit vehicles will benefit from the express lanes. So the transit vehicles will have a quick, straight shot.
Yep.
So those are what I believe how it will be different.
Okay.
Again, MARTA will be operating that.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. I want to speak briefly to the direction that was given to us last year's budget, and that I think will also help us satisfy this year's budget language that the House has inserted, if you all agree with that, around multi-county travel, transit-dependent customers, and state's economic development. We have created, and the board of the ATL has been fully supportive and excited about this effort, which is to make sure that whatever future plan we have for spending ATL dollars, but also cross-county transit in the future, whatever plan we put together meets these 3 targets: that we maintain competitiveness, that is attraction, retention of businesses, and connecting customers to addressable markets. We're not going to pretend that we can or should overbuild. Customer focus: who are our customers? What's their socioeconomic status? What access do they have to a car? What jobs are they looking to get to? And cross-county connections. in the handout, I would love to show the very last, the back page here, shows a map of where there are dense areas that we're calling in-person employment centers. In other words, you have to be at the job site to do the work. These jobs, we're going to, as we go through the work in the next year, we're going to be looking to understand what is the wage of those jobs, what is the employee profile that the distribution centers, hospitals, universities want to employ, and understand that cross-county connections don't exist today that could really support getting more access to workers for these folks. I want to call your attention quickly to the Hartsfield-Jackson line item in that table there. Total trips into Hartsfield is about $152,000 a year, and outside trips from outside Clayton County is $105,000. That makes sense, right? And most trips to Hartsfield are not from Clayton, but even out the blue shaded there, outside the MARTA service territory, 30% of the trips to Hartsfield are coming from outside the MARTA service territory. That's today. So those are definitely passengers for air travel, but they're also predominantly workers. And we've spoken with the airport and look forward to partnering with them. They really want to have access to more workers outside the Fulton Indicab Fulton DeKalb Clayton service territory that MARTA serves. That's our look forward for sensible transit planning. And that will also be fiscally constrained, which is not something that we have today.
Any questions from the committee? Janine, how many departments are you overseeing right now, or are you working with? GDOT, CERTA, ATL?
4.
4. Do you think that by the time you get to 5 that you might be on the most influential cover list? Or you think it will be when you get to 6? You think right now? It is. It is.
No, I could add a 5th on here. I do volunteer from time to time for the Department of Economic Development. So
there you go. Chairman Beach, you've got a good relationship with the publisher of James Magazine, don't you?
Oh, no.
We will make a run at that with Mr. Towery and Mr. Phil Kent. Both.
Great.
No, that honor should continue to be with Commissioner McMurray.
Thank you all for being here today. To the thousands of people viewing us at home, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Chairman.